What do you think of all that's happening with Russia? Obviously, a key Trump advisor resigned a few weeks ago after allegedly talking to a Russian ambassador about sanctions being lifted. How concerned are you about Russia?
I'm gravely concerned about Vladimir Putin's intentions and actions. And let me give you a little context. In August, I led a bipartisan delegation to Eastern Europe. 2 Republicans from the House, 2 Democrats from the Senate, and I visited the Czech Republic, Ukraine, and Estonia. Estonia is a tiny little country that is a NATO ally of the United States that used to be under Soviet subjugation for 50 years. They were invaded and occupied by Soviet Russia from 1940 until 25 years ago. And they're very nervous about what Putin's ambitions might be. In Ukraine, as you well know, Putin invaded, occupied, and annexed Crimea, part of Ukrainian territory. And there's an ongoing war in eastern Ukraine where the Russians are actively equipping, supplying, training so-called separatists in eastern Ukraine. And the United States is a party to an agreement between the United States and Russia and Ukraine where upon independence from the Soviet Union, they agreed to give up their nuclear weapons, and we agreed to guarantee their territorial sovereignty. Obviously, that hasn't worked out very well for them. In all 3 countries, we heard detailed briefings from the United States, from our ambassadors, from our intelligence services, from our diplomats about how Russia is engaged in a broad campaign of both overt and covert subjugation of our democratic allies. So contributing money to far-right and populist candidates, using cyber attacks to undermine political parties, funding journalists who spread false news. Exactly the same pattern that they used in the 2016 elections here in the United States. And I'm very concerned that this pattern that influenced our election in 2016 could influence our next elections, is about to influence the elections in France and Germany and in Holland in the EU. Putin has a publicly stated goal of undermining NATO, of dividing the United States from our European allies. And a lot of what President Trump has said and done helps advance that goal. So my hope is that the longer he's president, his Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State and Vice President, who've said encouraging things about the value of NATO, will move us back into the traditional direction of being on the side of our NATO allies and opposing Russian aggression. But there are some very troubling reports from the intelligence community, unanimous reports from the American intelligence community, saying that the Trump campaign was in regular contact with Russia before and up to and following the 2016 election. I think that deserves thorough investigation on a bipartisan basis. And I think this is an issue that is as much about understanding what happened in the last election as it is about making sure nothing like this happens again in our next election.
Do you expect Congress to do anything about this, given how divided Republicans and Democrats generally are about Russia and their role in the election?
I do. If we can't come together on a bipartisan basis to face up to, investigate, and respond to an intentional attack on our democracy by an adversary, then we're just not doing our job. I am concerned at the number of senators who are not supporting investigations into this. But 2 committees on which I serve, Judiciary and Foreign Relations, we have Republican committee chairs who've said that they will support hearings into this matter. And the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has the most direct jurisdiction, is the most relevant, is conducting hearings already.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much all I have for you. Thank you very much for your time, Senator. Appreciate you being here.